Hi guys, welcome back. In the last session, we completed our discussion related to how to configure Jetty as the embedded server and how to return direct response from the controller method by using response body. And we have summarized what we discussed in the Spring Web MVC as of now. So today, we are going to understand what is interceptor in Spring Web MVC. What is interceptor in Spring Web MVC? Interceptor is used to perform some pre-processing and post-processing of every request. Now, when we are accessing a web application, when users will send a request to the web application, our web application will perform some operation with that request and it will send a response. Now, for each and every request, I want to perform some pre-processing and post-processing. So we can use interceptor. We can use interceptor to perform pre-processing and post-processing of every request. So interceptor is used to perform pre-processing and post-processing of every request. Using interceptor, we can trap each and every request. So the common logics which are required for multiple controllers, we can write in the interceptor. For example, let us take here, there is one controller available, controller 1 available, controller 2 available, and controller 3 is available in my application. Like that, there are multiple controllers available in our application. Now, controller 1, controller 2, and controller 3 is available. There are several controllers available in our application. So in this controller, I want to verify request contains header or not. Request contains header or not. If request contains the header, then only I want to process that request. Here I need to write that logic. Here I need to write that logic. Here I need to write that logic. So instead of writing the common logic in all the controllers, we can write that common logic in a interceptor. We can write that common logic inside the interceptor. So what is the advantage of writing that in the interceptor? What is the advantage of writing that logic in the interceptor? If I write that logic in the interceptor, every request which is coming to our application, first we'll go to interceptor. Then from interceptor, we can give the request to our controllers. So whatever the common logic that is required for every request, instead of writing that common logic in the every controller, we can write that common logic in the interceptor. Each request will go to the interceptor and each response will pass from the interceptor. So here, each request we can access and each response we can access in the interceptor. By using that interceptor, we can perform pre-processing and post-processing of every request. Using the interceptor, we can trap each and every request. Some of the examples: calculate request processing time. Calculate request processing time. So client has sent a request. That request is received by our application and it processed by our application and it send response to the client. How much time it took to process that request? What is the time taken to process the request? We can identify by writing that logic in the interceptor. Because so request may come for controller 1, request may come to controller 2, request may come to controller 3. And in the each controller, multiple methods will be available. So request can come to the first controller, a request can come to second controller, a request can come to third controller. So here I should write the logic to calculate the request processing time. Here I should write the logic to calculate the request processing time. Suppose, for example, I am having 1000 methods in my application. So is it recommended to write the logic in the 1000 methods to calculate request processing time? Tell me guys, what I want to do is, whenever a request comes to my application, I want to calculate how much time it took to process that request. How much time is it taken by my application to process that request. I want to calculate that time. I want to print that time on the console. In order to do that logic in the controller one, here I'm having 10 methods, assume that. And here I'm having 10 methods. And in the controller 3, I'm having 10 methods, right? So in the first controller, we are having 10 methods. In the second controller, we are having 10 methods. In the third controller, we are having 10 methods. So here in the 10 methods, I need to write that logic. In these 10 methods, I need to write that logic. In these 10 methods, I need to write the logic to calculate how much time it took to process the request. So instead of writing that common logic in all the methods, we can write that logic in the interceptor. So here, every request will come to the interceptor. Interceptor can access the request and interceptor will execute the logic and it will forward the request to the actual controller. Once the controller processing is completed, controller will send the response. Interceptor will have the access for the response and the interceptor will give the final response. So here, whenever a request comes, before giving the request to the controller, we can execute some pre-processing logic. Once the request processing is completed, before sending the response to the client, we can do some post-processing on the request. Pre-processing means before request processing by the controller. Pre-processing before request processing by controller method. Okay. Post-processing after request processed by controller. After request processed by controller method. Right? That is called pre-processing and post-processing. Whenever a request comes, before request processing by controller method, we can do pre-processing logic by using interceptor. Once the request is processed by the controller method, then we can do post-processing logic also. Using this interceptor, we can trap each and every request and we can do some customization. So use cases for interceptor. Use cases for interceptor. Calculate each request processing time. First scenario, I want to calculate each request processing time. Then second request, log request and response details. Whatever the request is coming to our application, whatever the response is going from our application, I want to log each and every request and response details, log request and response details, request authentication. So whether this request is coming from our client or not, if the request is coming from our client, then only we can process. Otherwise, we don't want to process the request. Like this, we can perform request authentication, etc. These are some common use cases to go for interceptor. Whenever a request comes to our application, I want to calculate each request processing time. So after receiving the request, how much time it took to send the response to the client. So that request calculation, processing calculation I want to do. Log the request and response details. So whenever a request comes, I want to print a message, request received. This is information I got in the request. Whenever the response is sending, I want to print the message. This response is going to the client. This request is coming and this response is going. Like that, we can log each request and response details on the console or in the database or in the log file. And we can calculate request processing time and we can log request and response details and we can perform request authentication. That means whether the request is coming from our client or not. If the request is coming from our client, then only I want to process. Otherwise, I don't want to process this request. So what is interceptor in the Spring Web MVC? We can use interceptor to perform pre-processing and post-processing of a request. What is the meaning of pre-processing? Before request processing by controller method, we can execute some logic. So what is the post-processing? After request processed by the controller method, we can execute some logic that is called post-processing. Right. Now let us create one application with the interceptor concept. Okay, guys. Now let me go and create one web application, file, new, Spring Starter project. Right. I'm going to create the application with a name called 20 Spring Web MVC Interceptor app. Interceptor application, packaging it as a WAR file, click on next. Web starter I'm taking and dev tools I'm taking, click on finish. So here my application got created I want to develop this as a web application. So I have added interceptor. I want to develop this as a web application. So I have added interceptor. Now go here, check the pom.xml. I have taken only web starter because I want to develop a web application, right? Web starter is available, dev tools, starter Tomcat. Even if you don't add the starter Tomcat, by default, it will use Tomcat as the default embedded server with the web starter. Now, let me create one controller, guys. New class. I'm creating a controller, message controller. I'm creating a controller with a name called message controller. So to represent this as a controller, I want to go for @controller annotation. I don't want any UI page. I want to return direct response, welcome message. Okay, guys. Now, how to return the welcome message? Welcome to Ashokite. Welcome to Ashokite. Let me represent this as a get request method by using get mapping / welcome. Using get mapping / welcome. Now let me go for another one, string greet message. Now let me go for return good evening. Return good evening. Got my point. So let me map it to a get request method, get mapping / greet. Right. So two methods are available. Now, am I returning a view page or am I returning a response directly? Am I returning a view page? Am I returning a response directly, guys? Response. So, but dispatcher servlet will understand that it is a response, or a dispatcher servlet will consider this as a view page. Dispatcher servlet will consider that as a view page. How to represent that this is a response? For that, we will use @response body. So when I use @response body, it will understand that my method is returning direct response. Now here also I'm writing response body. Instead of writing the response body at the two methods, I can write at the class level. So when I write the response body annotation at the class level, it is applicable for all the methods available in the class. If you want to use it at the particular method level, then you can write at the method level. Am I writing at the method level or I'm writing at the class level? Am I writing this at the method level or am I writing at the class level? I'm writing at the class level. So what will happen when I write that at the class level? What will happen when I write that at the class level? Guys, what will happen when I write this at the class level? What will happen when I write at the class level? What will happen when I write at the class level? Applicable for all the methods. Controller plus response body is equal to REST controller. So let me run my application first. Let me access the methods which I have. Am I getting the response or not? Run this as boot application. Run this as boot application. Yes, I'm running this as a boot application. It started on the 8080. Now go to browser and try to access our application. Try to access localhost /8080/welcome. Now guys, am I able to access this method /welcome method? Yes, I'm able to access the welcome method. So that means response body annotation is applicable for my method or not. When I added the class level, it is applicable for all the methods. If you added the method level, it is applicable for particular method. So /welcome is working. Then let me go for /greet here. /greet is available, which will give good evening, right? It is applicable. Now I want to perform interceptor operation. I want to add the interceptor. So let us see how to add interceptor. Let us see how to add the interceptor. Now I'm going to create one class with a name called request log interceptor. You can give any name for that. Request log interceptor, I'm creating it in a separate package. Request log interceptor, I have created. How to make it as an interceptor? By extending the properties from web MVC configurer. Right, sorry. So request log interceptor, I'm extending. So to extend that handle interceptor, request log interceptor, I want to consider that as an interceptor. For that, I'm going to implement, there is an interceptor called handler interceptor. Now, in the Spring Web MVC, we are having one. In the Spring Web MVC, we are having one interface that is called handler interceptor. Now, in this handler interceptor, there are methods available. One is pre-handle method. Another one is post-handle method. One is pre-handle method. Another one is post-handle method. Now, let me write some logic here. System.out.println pre-handle method called. Just I want to show you when these interceptor methods are getting executed. Pre-handle method is called. Then here I'm writing post-handle method called. Pre-handle method called and post-handle method called. I just want to show you when these methods are getting executed. Pre-handle method is called and post-handle method is called. So this is a normal Java class. I want to represent this as a component. So for that, I'm using one annotation called @component. I'm using one annotation called @component, right? So I have created one class called request log interceptor, and this interceptor class is implementing a predefined interface called handler interceptor. A predefined interface called handler interceptor. So this is default method. So this is default method, and this is default method. These default methods are introduced in the Java 1.8 version, right? So if you want, you can override them. If you want, you can override them. I'm overriding. So whenever you call this pre-handle method, it is simply returning true. It is simply returning true value. Okay, guys. Now, simply let me return true value. Simply let me return true value. Here also, interceptor post-handle, it is a void method. It is not returning anything. Pre-handle method returning true. So this true and false is having a meaning. We will understand what is the difference between true and false in the pre-handle. Post-handle method return type is void. Now, let me check it. So here I am representing this as a component class. It is implementing handler interceptor. Now, let me run this application, run as boot application. Run as boot application, application started. As of now, my interceptor is executed or my interceptor is not executed, guys. Now, our interceptor is executed or our interceptor is not executed. Can you check it and tell me? Interceptor is executed or interceptor is not executed? Interceptor is executed or not executed? Our interceptor is not executed. Our interceptor is not executed. Our interceptor is not executed. Let us make a request to our controller and see. Welcome method is available. Let us make a request to the welcome. I send a request to the welcome. Interceptor is executed or interceptor is not executed? Not executed. Let's go for greet method and check it. Interceptor is executed or interceptor is not executed? Here also interceptor not executed. Here also interceptor not executed. Are you able to follow me? I have created an interceptor by implementing a predefined interface called handler interceptor. I'm overriding the pre-handle method. So pre-handle method should be called before processing the request. Pre-processing logic should be executed here in the pre-handle method. Post-processing logic should be executed by the post-handle method. But this pre-handle method, post-handle methods are executed, or these methods are not executed. Pre-handle, post-handle methods are executed, or these methods are not executed. Not executed. So currently, our dispatcher servlet is not able to understand that there is an interceptor in the project. Our dispatcher servlet is not able to understand that there is an interceptor in the project. We need to inform to the dispatcher servlet that there is a interceptor in our project. Are you guys getting my point? How to inform that? Let me create one more class in dot ashokit.config. So here I'm writing one class called MVC config, app config. Right. Inside this config class, I'm going to tell that there is an interceptor available in our project. Let me go for @configuration. We discussed in the previous sessions what is the purpose of configuration. So if you want to represent a Java class as a configuration class, then we are going to use @configuration annotation. Inside this configuration annotation, we can write the bean methods. Inside this configuration annotation, we can write the bean methods. So here I'm going to extend the properties from one class WebMVC configurer adapter. There is a class called WebMVC configurer adapter class is available. So I think they have deprecated this. What is the alternate for this? Yeah, WebMVC configurer adapter class is deprecated. So they made the methods as default methods. So directly we can add the default methods. Add interceptor method I want to handle. Let me write add interceptors method. Override add interceptors. So I want to add the interceptor. So what is the interceptor? The interceptor, that is request log interceptor. I want to inject that request log interceptor into this config class. How to do that? Private request log interceptor. I'm going to take it as log interceptor. I want to inject that class here. For that, I'm using @auto wiring. I'm using @auto wiring. Now registry is available. Registry dot add interceptor. So which is log interceptor. Right. So here I'm creating a class with a name called app config. To represent this class as a configuration class, I'm using @configuration annotation. In this class, I'm extending the properties from WebMVC configurer adapter. In that class, there is a method called add interceptor. Interceptor registry is available. So I'm adding my interceptor to this interceptor registry so that application will understand that there is an interceptor in the project. That interceptor pre-handle method and post-handle method should be executed for every request and response. Let us see. Is it going to work now? Run as boot application. Run as boot application. Let us clear the console. Clear the console. Now go to welcome method, send a request. Now can you see pre-handle method is called, post-handle method is called for one request. I just send a request for the welcome page. When I send a request for the welcome page, can you see my pre-handle method is executed and my post-handle method is also executed? My pre-handle method, post-handle methods also executed. Now interceptor is working or interceptor is not working now? Interceptor is working or interceptor is not working now? Interceptor is working now. Clear the console. Let me send the request once again. Send the request once again. Now again, my interceptor is working or interceptor is not working. Again, my interceptor is working or my interceptor is not working. My interceptor is working. Good. Now, I want to calculate the time which has taken by each request. How much time it has taken to process request now? So whatever the common logic that you want to write in all the controllers, can you write the common logic in the interceptor now? Can you write the common logic in the interceptor now? Come on, guys. Right. Now see here. Here I'm going to calculate what is the time. Here I want to calculate what is the time. Current time in millis. Okay. So I want to calculate current time in millis. So system dot current time in millis. Whenever the request comes, Then I want to calculate what is the current time. Current time in millis, I'm going to take this. So this data I'm going to store in request dot set attribute start time. Start time I'm storing in the request object, right? So whenever request comes to our application, that request data, that request will come to interceptor first. Pre-handle method will execute. In this pre-handle method, what I'm doing, I'm taking the time when the request is received, I'm taking that as a start time. Once I have taken the start time, that start time I'm storing into the request attribute, right? Once the request processing is completed, then post handle method will be called. In the post handle method, what I will do, I will calculate end time. System dot current time millis. Here, whenever request comes, initially pre-handle method will execute. In the pre-handle method, I'm taking that time. That time I'm storing in the request attribute as a start time. So once the request processing is completed, then post handle method will execute. In the post handle method, I'm taking the time. That time I'm calling as end time. Now, end time minus start time, it will give you total time taken by your request. Total time taken by your application to process the request. How to get the start time from the request? So to get the start time from the request, I will use request.get attribute. I stored the start time in the request attribute. Now I want to get that long start time is equal to long of start time. So here in the request attribute, I'm storing my start time in the pre-handle method. Once the request processing is completed, then it will call the post handle method. In the post handle method, I'm getting the end time, then I'm getting the start time, then I'm going to get long time is equal to end time minus start time. End time minus start time, it is going to give in the milliseconds. So how many milliseconds it has taken to process our request, that we can identify here by using end time minus start time. So this end time minus start time, I can print on the console. System.out.println total time taken. Total time taken in the milliseconds format. How much time it has taken to process our request, I'm printing. This is request processing time calculation. Whenever request comes to our application, then first pre-handle method will be called. In the pre-handle method, I'm taking the start time. That start time I'm storing in the request attribute. Once that pre-handle method execution got completed, it will go to our controller method. Controller will process the request, controller will send the response. Then this interceptor post handle method will be executed. In the post handle method, I'm calculating the current time. Already in the request attribute, I stored the start time. I'm getting the start time from the request attribute. Then end time minus start time, it will give me the total time it has taken to process our request. So here, interceptor we can use to calculate each request processing time of our application. Now, let's execute it. Clear the console. Send a request. I send the request. How many milliseconds it has taken to process a request? 4 milliseconds it has taken to process the welcome request. Similarly, let's go for greet request. Send the request for greet. How many milliseconds it has taken now? Only 2 milliseconds it has taken to process the request. Now send the request for the welcome again. Now 2 milliseconds it has taken. Send the request for the greet, 1 millisecond. So here, how much time it is taking to process each request, that also we can calculate by using interceptor. So now, do I need to write this common logic in every controller method, or I can write that in the interceptor? In my controller, there are several methods available. Do I need to write request processing time calculation in every method of the controller? I'm writing that only at one place in the interceptor. Now, do I need to write the request processing time calculation in every method, or it is not required? I'm writing that at only one place. So now do you understand what is interceptor and what is the purpose of the interceptor? Guys, are you able to understand what is interceptor and what is the purpose of the interceptor? Do you understand what is interceptor and what is the purpose of the interceptor? Yes. Interceptor is used to perform pre-processing and post-processing of every request. So whenever request comes, initially pre-handle method is going to execute. Can you access complete request data in the pre-handle method? Can you access complete request data in the pre-handle method? Come on, guys. Can you access whatever the request client is sending? Can you access that data in the request? Can you access the data from the request? Right. So whatever the response that we are sending, do we have the access for that request and response in the post handle also? Yes. Whatever the request is coming from the client, that request we can access in the pre-handle method. Whatever the response we are sending to the client, that response also we can handle in the pre-handle method, post-handle method. So that means we can do some pre-processing and post-processing of every request by writing an interceptor. What are the common use cases to go for the interceptor? You can calculate each request processing time. You can log each request and response details. You can do some request authentication also. You can perform some request authentication also. In the request, if a particular field comes, then only I want to process. Otherwise, I don't want to process. Here, pre-handle method return type is true. If I return true, then only the request will go to actual controller. Pre-handle method return type is Boolean. Now, so whenever this method returns Boolean value, then only request will go to actual controller. Send the request. So pre-handle method is executed. Post-handle method is executed. It is printing total time taken to process as 3 milliseconds it has taken. For example, I am going to return false from this method. Pre-handle method is returning the false value. Okay. Now let's observe what is the behavior of our method. I'm sending a request. When I'm sending a request, now what happened, guys? Only pre-handle method is called. Request is going to our controller method or not. Let's verify. /welcome. Request is going to controller or request is not going to controller when the pre-handle method is returning the false value. When the pre-handle method is returning the false value, request is going to the controller or request is not going to the controller. Come on, guys. Now, my method is returning the false value. I'm expecting some data in the request. That data is not coming in the request. Okay, for example, for all my clients, I will give some client ID. For all my clients, I will give some client ID. In my client ID, I'm expecting them to return some value, to send some value. Okay, now let me see here. Request dot get parameter client ID. I'm expecting as a query parameter. Now here client ID, all my clients should send client ID in the request. If client ID dot equals to Ashok IT, something like this. If a client ID dot equals to Ashok IT, then only I want to return true. Otherwise, I want to return false value. Are you guys getting my point? I'm expecting a client ID as a request parameter. If you send the client ID in the request as a Ashok IT, then only your request will be processed. Otherwise, your request will not be processed. I'm returning the false value. Right? So can I do request authentication by using interceptor? Every request which is sending by my clients, they have to send the client ID in the request. So now, is it easy to verify client ID coming as Ashok ID or not in all the 30 methods? Are you going to write that logic in all the 30 methods to verify client ID coming as Ashok ID or not? Can you do that? Is it recommended to write that logic in all the 30 methods of our application? No. So if a client ID is coming in the request as Ashok IT, then only I want to process the request. Otherwise, I don't want to process the request. If any request comes with the client ID as Ashok IT, then only I want to process. Otherwise, I don't want to process. Now, see here, clear the console. Now go to our application. What is the key that I'm expecting? I'm expecting the key as a client ID. Now go to /welcome, /welcome, /welcome. Now here I have request, 1 minute. Here I have a request. Now here HTTP servlet response is available. Now I will do response dot get writer dot print. I'm saying as invalid request. Response dot get writer dot print invalid request. If request comes with client ID as Ashok IT, that will process. If request does not contain the Ashok IT, then I will say that as a invalid request. Right. Now let's go to our URL /welcome. So when I send a request with the /welcome, then what happened? We are getting a null pointer exception. 1 minute. Where is that null pointer exception? Line number Java 23. If client ID dot equals to Ashok ID. Client ID coming as null dot value, null pointer exception. How to avoid this? Ashok IT dot equals to client ID. Yeah, I changed it, guys. This is the right way to do the string comparison. Yeah, clear the console. Now send a request without client ID. When I send a request without client ID, then what is coming? Invalid request. Now take this URL welcome client ID is equal to Ashok ID. Now, are we getting welcome to Ashok IT? Now, similarly, go to greet request method. Greet request method. When you send a request to the greet, is it processing our request or it is not processing our request? It is not processing our request because client ID it is expecting. Now, if you send client ID is equal to some ABC, still it is not accepting, invalid request. If you send client ID is equal to Ashok IT, then only it is processing. So to verify in each request client ID is coming or not, am I writing that logic in every controller method? Am I writing that logic in the interceptor? Come on, guys. So do I need to write that request authentication logic in every method? Request authentication logic I'm writing in the interceptor. Request authentication logic I'm writing in the interceptor. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? So what I am doing here, whenever a request comes, then my interceptor is going to execute. So whenever request comes, then interceptor pre-processing pre-handle method is going to execute. In the pre-handle method, you can write the authentication logic. If you get the client ID as Ashok IT, then you return true. When you return true, then it will go to actual controller method and it will process that. Okay. So if the Ashok ID is not matching in the client ID, then you return the false by writing some response to the client saying that it is an invalid request. I need client ID in the request, then only you are my client, then only I will process your request. Otherwise, you are not my client, I will not process your request. So whatever the logic I am writing, can we write this logic in all the 30 methods? Is it recommended? Is it recommended to write this logic in all the 30 methods? No. We should write that common logic at one place. Can I say we can write the common logics of all the methods in the interceptor now to perform some pre-processing and post-processing? Yeah. So when the pre-handle method will execute, when the post-handle method will execute? Tell me, guys. When pre-handle method will execute, when the post-handle method will execute? When the pre-handle method will execute and when the post-handle method is going to execute. When the pre-handle method will execute and when the post-handle method is going to execute. Before request processing, whenever you send a request, first the request will go to pre-handle. In the pre-handle, you can decide whether to process the request or not. If you want to process the request, return true. If you don't want to process the request, return false. When the post handle method will execute. Once the request processing is completed by your controller, you will get the control to post handle. In the post handle, you can access the request data, you can access the response data, and you can access the model and view. If you want to send some customized response also, you can send it. If you can add some extra data to the response also by using this model and view object. By using model and view object. Now you understand what is interceptor and why we need to go for interceptor? Guys, do you understand what is interceptor and why we need to go for interceptor? Yeah. So can anyone tell me? Can you unmute your mic and tell me what is interceptor and why we need to go for interceptor? Come on, guys.
To write the common code. Like that.
Instead of writing code for all the methods, to write the common logic in one place, that is interceptor, I think.
Yeah, interceptor based the main purpose of interceptor to perform pre-processing and post-processing of a request.
Yes.
Whenever request comes, I want to execute some logic. When the request processing is completed, before sending the response, I want to execute some logic. So can you tell me what are the use cases to go for interceptor in the project? When we should use interceptor in the project?
Yeah. If any like authentications related.
Yeah, any authentication that you want to do in your application, instead of writing authentication logic in each and every method, we can keep that in the interceptor. Okay, authentication is one valid scenario. Any other?
Calculate the time.
Calculate time for request and response.
Yes. How much
time it takes to?
Yes. How much time our application has taken to process the request? That calculation also can be done by using interceptor. And whenever request comes, I want to store the request data, and whenever the response is going, I want to store the response data. So in my project, there are 100 methods available. Clients can access any of the method. Each request response I want to log. Can we use interceptor for that scenario also?
Yes.
Yes. Request logging, request authentication can be done by using this interceptor. So in the interceptor, mainly we are using two methods. One is the pre-handle method. Another one is post-handle method. Can you guys tell me when the pre-handle method will execute and when the post-handle methods will execute?
Before request to process.
When the pre-handle method will execute and when the post-handle method will execute?
Pre-handle method
request
will
comes.
execute before request processing.
Whenever the request comes.
Whenever the request comes, then immediately pre-handle method will execute. Before sending the response to the client, then post-handle method will execute. By using interceptor, can we stop the request processing if authentication is failing?
Yes.
Yes.
How to stop the request processing if authentication
Using
is
return
failed?
false.
Return true or false.
Yeah, pre-handle method is returning true or false value. When the pre-handle method is returned true, then what will happen?
It will
process the controller.
The request processing will continue. The request processing will continue. If I return the false value, then what will happen?
It will not process.
Invalid.
It will not
Will
work.
not process the request.
Request processing is not going to happen. Are you guys clear?
Yeah.
Good.
But here, where we see the time improvement, sir, actually.
Sir,
We see the time calculation only. Here we calculated the end time minus start time. But where we observe the time improvement, that is my doubt actually.
Time improvement we can't observe. It is just to tell you how much time it has taken to process. If it is taking more time, then you need to check your logic why it is taking more time, and you need to customize your logic. Interceptor will not improve your time. Interceptor will let you know how much time it has taken to process the request. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
It will not do the improvement. If it is taking more time, then you need to identify why it is taking more time, which logic is taking more time, and you need to change that logic.
Sir, how do you print the URL pattern? Using URL pattern, how do you print the start time and end time of particular URL method?
So whatever the request object that we are getting, right? So if you print this complete request data, here request dot get character encoding, content length, content type, cookies, header name, headers, HTTP servlet mapping, input stream, headers, local address, locale. Here the methods will be available. Those methods will give you the information about that. That means, so which URL you access, the request came from which URL, the request come from which system, from which IP address the request came. All the request information you can access by using this request object.
Okay. Methods available. Okay.
Yeah. So the HTTP request object is available now. So that
Okay.
complete request information you can access. So let me just print it. System.out.println of request. In this request, methods will be available to access all the information from which system the request is coming, from which IP the request is coming, to which data coming in the request, what is the query parameters are available. Everything we can access with the request object.
Hello, sir.
1 minute. Clear the console. Yeah. Send the request. Now it is printing as a request facade. We need to call the methods, sir. When we call the methods,
Yes.
then you can access that information.
Okay.
When I print this request, it is printing toString method, right? So here we have the methods request.get attribute, auth type, get a header data, get the context path. You can access all this information.
Okay.
Yeah. Get request info. There is a method called get request. URL is available. Let us see what is the get request URL is printing. Yeah. Can you see here?
Yeah. /create.
Yeah. Which URL that you are accessing, that request URL also we are able to access. That means by using this request object, complete request information, whatever the data the client is sending, to which URL the client is sending a request, we can access by using this request object. Request.get request URL.
Okay.
Good.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi, sir.
Yeah. Hi, sir.
So so this handler acceptor is applicable for every API, sir. Like suppose if we are going to customize the time for any API, so we can use there the handler interceptor.
Yes, this interceptor you can use in the, it is applicable for all the requests which are coming to your application. It can be any API, no problem.
So, sir, there is any alternate is there for instead of writing the handler interceptor?
No, this, if you want to use interceptor, this is the approach.
Okay, so instead of writing interceptor, sir, any other approach is there, sir?
No. Interceptor is the one which is used to intercept each and every request. If you want to write some common logic which is required for multiple classes, instead of writing that, you can keep that in the interceptor.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello, sir. Difference between filter and interceptor.
Sir, filters are used to customize the request and response data. Interceptor is just taking the request and processing that request and sending the response, right? So filter that we can use in the servlets concept, the interceptor, it is introduced in this Spring Web MVC.
Okay. Sir, one parameter is request and another is response. Another one, object.
Handler.
What it contains, sir?
Yeah, let me print that a handler. Handler maybe is the interceptor that we are accessing.
Okay.
Or which is your request handler. It can be your request handler. That means which controller class is going to this request is binded to which controller method, that is the handler.
Okay.
That handler also you can access. That means your request came right. This request should be handled by which controller, which method, that is considered as the handler. That handler it is printing.
Okay, understood, sir.
Yeah. Now suppose if I'm sending the request to /welcome, then what it will do? My request came to welcome URL pattern. That means in the message controller, welcome message method should be called. That means this request belongs to this controller method.
Okay.
It is an invalid request. Why it is coming as invalid request? Because I'm not passing the client ID. So if I pass the client ID, then that request will be processed. Welcome message, it has taken 2 milliseconds to process my request. So the request authentication I'm doing in the pre-handle method. So if the request is authenticated, if the client ID is valid, then I will return true. Otherwise, I will return false by writing some error message.
Sir, in REST case also we can implement this handler.
Yes. Even tomorrow, when we are going to develop that, already this is a REST API. Controller plus response body is equal to REST control. This we can consider as a REST API only.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, madam, tell me.
Sir,
Yeah.
can you post a sample production ready Spring Web MVC form where we are using HTML, CSS3 and JavaScript, a real
Yes.
example? Can you please post in the GitHub or can you prepare a video?
Sure, sir. I will do that.
Also, sir.
Thank you.
Already that video is available with respect to REST API. Already I have posted a video related to that. I will share the link. Anyhow, we are going to develop that real card operation application in our course.
Spring Web MVC first.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, in real time, in which scenarios we can modify the post handle, like before sending the client?
Setting the error status codes that we will do. Generally, we don't modify that. If you want to do that, you have the option. Generally, whatever the response code we are getting, if it is an error response. So now I have a HTTP response object. If the response is 200, I want to log that response in the database. If the error response is there, based on the status code, I can store the data into particular table. This is success response table. This is error response table. We can do business operation, right? Depends on the requirement.
What is the difference between post handle and after completion handle?
Post after completion handle means immediately after your controller method execution completed, that method will execute. Post handle means once the dispatcher servlet is ready to dispatch the response to the client, then this method is going to execute.
Okay.
That is the third method that we have after completion, right?
Apart from this, is there any other methods are there?
No, only 3 methods are there.
Okay.
In this interceptor, there are only 3 methods.
Hello,
Handler interceptor, it contains pre-handle method, intercept point before the execution of the handler. Okay. And here we have another method, post handle, interception point after successful execution of the handler, called after the handler. Now after completion, callback after completion of the request processing, that is after rendering the view. That means, here before our request go to the controller method, pre-handle method will execute. Immediately after our controller is executed, then post handle. After sending the response to the client successfully, then this after completion method is going to execute.
It will say only status, right? After completion method.
After completion of method, if you want to clean up some resources, you can do like that. They have given the option to write some logic, but I have not used this method anywhere. Okay. We used post handle. Immediately after our controller has returned the response, we will check the status code. Is it success or failure by using the response.get status code. If it is a success status code, we will store into database in one table. If it is a failure status code, we'll store into another database table basically. That is called logging the request and response. Success request logging, success response logging, failure response logging we can do based on this response object. If you want to execute some logic after sending the response to the client also, then after completion method you can execute.
Can we do redirect message, like redirect the page for pre-handle method?
Redirection means?
Like if the request is false, then it will goes to same page.
You can do that. Na? Response object you have, by using that response, you can get the request dispatcher and you can redirect also. Response.get request dispatcher, request.get request dispatcher. Servlets concept is there, right? Request.get request dispatcher. To which page you want to redirect, you can give that page URL.
Okay.
It will redirect.
Sir, here we are implementing WebMVC interceptor, right? That is deprecated. What is the alternate for that, sir?
Sir, that interface you no need to implement. You can directly go for functional interface method. You no need to do that. Right. So whatever the configuration I have written, app config. So in the app config, we are extending the properties from WebMVC configure adapter. We can do that, right? So directly you can add a separate bean method, and in that bean method you can write it. You don't need to extend this also.
Yeah, lambda expression, na?
Yeah, we can write the lambda expression for that. In the Spring Boot latest versions, they have deprecated this. So
this WebMVC adapter also using Spring Boot security also, na sir? Configuration.
Right.
There are two methods, configure and
correct. Spring Interceptor. We can see the official website of the Spring Handler Interceptor. They have given the documentation. Handler Interceptor interface is available. In that, whatever the methods are there, those methods we can access. Pre-handle method, request, post-handle method, and after completion, there are 3 methods available here. Pre-handle, post-handle, and after completion. Pre-handle will execute before our controller method is executed. Post-handle will execute after our controller method execution completed. After completion will execute after sending the response to the client. After rendering the view, then that after completion method is going to execute. Fine.
Sir, other than handler adapter, is there any other to implement that method?
Lambda expression we can, I will send you that code. I will check it. How that lambda expression we can implement for this. Here, instead of extending the properties from this, earlier we used this, now we no need to use this. It is deprecated. So directly we need to register our interceptor. I will send that piece of code.
Sir, I read that like 2 methods are there to extend that. One is for all are going to like override, and next one is we can choose that which method we can override. I forgot the names.
Yeah, ping in the group. Whatever you analyze, just post in the group. You'll see.
Yeah. Okay.
Sir, in MVC, we don't need web.xml, right?
Not required. Not required, sir, because whatever the front controller dispatcher servlet is there, Spring is automatically loading that class. So if you see in my WebMVC application, that web.xml file is not available. It's not required.
Okay. Because of web.xml, we don't need to main method, right, in servlet.
Yeah, we have a main method. The application execution will start from the main method.
Okay. Bin construct.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Hello.
Hi, sir.
Yes, sir. Tell me.
We just discussed regarding filter and interceptor. Okay, filter is used for the customization of the request and response. Okay, and similarly, customization of request and response. Okay, can we achieve this by using the interceptors?
Yes, we can access that.
No. Can we achieve the customization of the request and response by using the interceptor?
Yes, we can achieve the customization of the request and response, right? We have the access for the request object and response object. You can customize that.
Okay, means here we in this example, okay, we have set the request.set attribute. Okay, yep. That is customization, I think.
Yeah, that is a customization. We are already modifying the request object, right?
Okay, means whatever we can achieve filter, okay, that can be achieved by using the interceptor.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello, sir. If I want to implement filter in my project, Spring Boot project, how can I achieve?
Sir, Spring Boot WebMVC internally uses Servlet API. Whatever the filter interface available now, you can create a class and you can implement the filter interface. How you will do it in the Servlet? Same thing you can do, because the Servlet JW API will be used by our Spring WebMVC. You can write the filter.
Okay.
Right.
Hello, Ashok sir.
Sir,
actually, this question is not related to Puri. In backup video set, Monday video is not coming, sir.
I will check that, sir, once.
Yeah.
The difference between handler interceptor and handler interceptor adapter.
Handler interceptor is providing the methods. Interceptor adapter, it is used to register the interceptors with that. Whatever the interceptors that you want to use in the application, you can register by using adapter. Handler interceptor is working as an interceptor for us, which is having the pre-handle, post-handle methods that we are writing.
That means these 2 methods contains all these 3 methods?
Correct.
Okay.
Sir, are we going to develop any complete application using Spring Web MVC, sir?
Yeah, that is what, sir. I will send one requirement. I want you people to try this over this weekend.
Okay. One more thing is, yes, sir.
Yeah, Tomorrow I'm going to explain how to handle exceptions in the WebMVC.
One more thing is you said that implementing paginations are in WebMVC. How do we
Sure,
do
sir.
that?
Sure, we can do it.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Fine. Thank you guys. With this, I'm stopping now. We'll continue in tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we'll see exception handling in the WebMVC. Thank you.